Hi, it's time for the Big Brain Radio Show. I'm Dr. Davis Ducey, and you can call me Dr. D.
And I'm Dr. Zena Zanders, and you can call me Dr. Z.
And we are the Big Brain Radio Show on TV. Well, welcome back to another
Welcome back to you, Dr. Ducey.
Well, thank you. That was very nice.
All right.
You look exceptional.
Thank you. You look so handsome
I was
today.
like sitting across from your beautiful smile.
You must get adjusted because you just look radiant today.
Great.
What's the subject today?
Well, we're going to start talking about the Big Brain Radio Show and why we're calling it the Big Brain Radio Show on TV. Do you know why?
Why?
Because it's on TV.
That's right. So we started with a radio show for 10 years, and we're taking those principles and sharing them with you, the viewers, on TV.
Yeah. And the reason we do the Big Brain Radio Show is to let you know that you are much more, your brain is much more than I think most people think about. In fact, a lot of people probably don't even think about it. But you are your brain. You live your life inside your brain. No other place. It's the only place you exist. Any experiences, any information you have, anything you know, that's what makes your life. In fact, you could say you're the center of your life. Maybe the center of life as you know it, because nobody else knows what's going on in your brain. No one's been able to stand outside themselves and look into their brain, or to stand out themselves and look inside anybody else's brain. So your life is your brain, and we call it your big brain. What do you think about that?
I think that's so awesome. Now, there's two principles for the big brain. There's a metaphysical side and a physical side.
All of life is composed of two things, the physical part and the part that we can't see, and we'll call it the metaphysical. It's around the physical. It's where life lives itself. Life is, you can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't weigh it, but everybody puts their real emphasis on the metaphysical experience of life. But if you don't have a healthy physical and a well-working physical brain, you're not going to be able to have that wonderful metaphysical experience we call life.
Exactly. So as chiropractors, because that is our professional training, I've been a chiropractor for only over 20 years. And you've been a chiropractor?
44 years.
A long time.
Yes.
So we work with the physical body, and that's the preliminary step. But once you get your body organized, it isn't long before the brain comes along. Well, and the brain is representing more of the metaphysical, spiritual side.
Even in the years when we used to work with the spine, chiropractors use this concept called innate, which means that the experience of living who you are. And that has manifested in our ability to see that really takes place in the brain. It is the experiences that you have and your ability to tie it into your own life. You know, we're really about spirit and hope, with the information that allows you to live that life, and then the experiences that allow you to sustain that hope for all people and for yourself. Because that's what we want to have, is a great life.
They often call us the last hope chiropractors because people have been everywhere trying to heal, including prestigious medical facilities like the Mayo Clinic, which is in our backyard, really, being in Minnesota. And yet they've yet to get better, all the way better. They've just been managing their life. So we're excited to bring these big brain philosophy and principles to you, and to invite you to our clinic if you feel like you have lost hope or you need a way to continue healing. Just
to give you a better idea who we are, we developed a philosophy of health called the evolutionary health style. And it sounds kind of simple, but it's actually quite unique in the fact that evolutionary means that instead of having health just be at some point you've arrived, you are going to continually evolve to your life till the day you don't have a life, and that will be your ability to create that. And
so living until the day you die,
yes,
instead
really,
of dying while you're
living. But adding to your experiences, like we have people come in with serious injuries and they want to get back to where they were. We want them to get back where they weren't, above that, better than. It kind of sort of creates a margin of life, all right? Mm-hmm. And if you create a physical margin, you create a metaphysical margin, and you'll start having and thinking and seeing things that you didn't see before, because your brain is remarkably wired to pick up information that you need specifically and then create it as experiences that you understand.
It's like the law of conservation of energy. Energy is never lost or destroyed. It only changes form. So if you've been in an accident and there's an area in your body that's hurt, the energy is being kept, using a lot of energy to take care of that wounded area. If we can heal that area, that energy is freed up again. And sometimes you get more energy after the healing to live your life in the more spiritual, metaphysical realm than you had before your injury.
Yeah, said another way, the energy is in the wrong form. It's not in the form that you want to use. It's being used to maintain these injuries. And I just had a lady come in today. She'd had all these hip problems and that. And slowly her energy wasn't there anymore. She didn't have any muscle tone. Her arms were getting weak. And of course, she was being checked for all these serious diseases, which is fine. But she didn't have that. She had a loss of connection with the power of her brain creating the tone. So the energy you were born with is still the energy you have. You just want to get it back, and that's what we do. That energy helps you heal. Go ahead.
That's right. And there are two constants in the universe, gravity and love. And gravity rules the physical universe, and love is the master of the metaphysical universe. So how does that play together?
Well, we talked about that. The only reason that we exist as human beings is because of gravity. Gravity initiates our development. In fact, even the fact that two cells get attracted to each other and unite, that is based on gravity. If a lady were to get pregnant in space where there's only microgravity, the baby would not live. So gravity actually is the constant force on our body. We have receptors in our muscles and our joints, but especially in our muscles, 90% of the muscle in the spine, that get triggered to start making us create our life. So if you're a 2-year-old, you're getting just enough input, but then as you get bigger, you're going to put more input in your brain, and then genetically you're going to be a 3-year-old because you have 3-year-old characteristics in your brain that you don't need when you're 2, you need them when you're 3. And lots of times that energy gets impeded, and especially when you're in your spine, you don't grow.
And then let's talk about love. In the absence of love, we know that people who are not loved can perish. Mm-hmm. Without physical contact and love, babies will die as well. So the metaphysical part of us, the spiritual part, needs to be fed as well. But it's hard to feel that way if you're hurting in your body. It's hard to have a spiritual, metaphysical experience that's rewarding.
Yeah, we used to have we still have it. We have a term, it's called loving service, our first technique. Because when people come in with their health problems and they engage us, and obviously we're going to engage them in a different way because we're going to be talking about their brain and their ability to respond and the conditions they have and how it all fits in. And they're going to, a lot of them have been hopeless. They've gone to lots of places. They're not getting better. And so we need to make sure that sometimes when they go places, you get judged by how you're hurting and they don't get the loving experiences they should have. They should have a loving experience because that experience will allow their information in their brain to start collecting their health again.
The other part of the evolutionary health style is everyone has a style in life, and it includes your health as well, and your style is determined by your values. And your values are what's most important to you in your life. Oftentimes your values are driven by your voids. The things you haven't had in life make you drive for the things you do want in life.
That's a whole nother lecture.
That's a whole nother lecture.
Talk.
But everybody has a different desire for their health, and that would be your health style. And what's important to you, one person may want to be so healthy they could go skiing. Another person might want to be so healthy they can lift up their grandchildren. There's different values for different people.
Right, and there's another thing in this word style, because who you are is what you're willing to do. So we're going to treat them and get them to recover their health in the style they're used to. We're not going to make them lift weights if they're not the kind of person that would want to lift weights. We'll do other body movements to recover their health. We'll allow them to use a style in their own health recovery. And the definition that we use for health is the
optimal number
of action
forward action days.
Forward action, regenerative forward action.
There you go.
Which means you're not just going to get better, you're going to generate or regenerate the tissues, and you're going to, in your mind, in your body, in your brain, and you're going to feel better than you felt in yours.
Well, this is so exciting.
Yes, I'm so excited.
This is so exciting.
Should I jump up and down?
I don't know. So we wanted to introduce these big brain principles from the Big Brain Radio Show on TV with you today, so that when we proceed to the other types of healing, you'll understand where we're coming from.
So you're going to be lined up with you're going to have an axial alignment with the universe so your body can heal the best in terms of gravity and love. So welcome to the Big Brain Radio Show.
Welcome to the Big Brain Radio Show. And when we return, please tune in. We're going to be talking about motor vehicle trauma and why it's so devastating to your body and your brain. Even the slightest fender bender, 3 to 5 miles per hour, can have a massive effect on your brain and your life.
Hi, welcome to the Big Brain Radio Show. I'm Dr. David Stussy, and you can call me Dr. D.
And I'm Dr. Zena Zanders, and you can call me Dr. Z.
And we are the Big Brain Radio Show on TV. Well, here we are with another Big Brain Radio Show on TV, and we got something special that we want to share with people today.
Very important message today. One of the primary reasons people are injured in our society is from motor vehicle trauma. And the number one reason people suffer concussion is also from a motor vehicle trauma. we happen to be specialists in treating both of these areas. So we'd like to introduce this idea for you today.
Yeah, what we want to explain to you is why and how you get hurt, and how could you have something even as a concussion in a motor vehicle accident, and it's because of the acceleration, deceleration that your neck and your head undergoes, and your body is traumatized. Often people say, gee, I don't know, I didn't get hit that hard, but if you get hit with any kind of sudden force, your neck is going to accelerate and decelerate and get injured, and if you get caught like by surprise, which a lot of accidents happen, you have a 90% chance of having a permanent injury.
Even a 3 to 5 mile an hour fender bender can have the G-forces on your neck as if you fell from a 3-story building. So it's all about G-forces.
That's right. That's very good.
Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. Would you please explain this lovely diagram?
Well, first of all, I want to show that your spine has these tissues in it. It's called a disc and a facet. And the facet is like the joints in the spine, and the disc, everybody's kind of heard of that little cushion. Well, they are the two structures that get torn in the injury, and when they get torn, it's not like a rip, it's like a run in a nylon. It gets compromised. And the way this happens is if let's just say you get hit from behind, as it shows right here, then the seat starts going forward, but your head actually starts going backwards, and then the seat springs in the other direction. So it's kind of like the worst situation, and your head is thrust in the opposite direction.
They call this acceleration. As the car is going forward, you're accelerating backward. And then you come to a sudden deceleration.
Your foot hits the brake,
Foot
and
hits
boom.
the brake, the seatbelt stops you, and you've got a classic whiplash to your neck.
Yeah, and what gets torn is what I was saying, these tissues in the neck. And so I want to show people what actually happens with this tear, okay?
And this is called?
Fibrosis of repair. So as soon as you injure yourself, your body's going to start to heal. And I would call it scar tissue. And, you know, if you cut yourself, you're going to form scar tissue. But it has a more serious consequence when it's in the spine, because as soon as you're torn, there's inflammation that starts. And so let's just take an example. Let's just say if you were to put under a microscope a muscle or a ligament or a tendon, it would look like this. So like a net, nice and stretchy, it can move. But then it gets torn. We'll call it like this. It gets torn in here, and that causes an immediate response. And what happens immediately is your body adapts like you have been injured, and you have inflammation, white blood cells, and swelling in there, and that slowly builds up inside, and that's going to go on for about 12 to 18 hours. And then you're going to start getting another thing that happens, and it happens automatically. You're going to get what's called fibrosis of repair. Your body's going to start laying scar tissue in there. And we're going to use the blue for this one.
Okay, so this is representing scar tissue?
So yeah, so your body will start healing that with scar tissue, and it can be at random. So the first thing that we want to do, if we were seeing you, is to minimize. You're going to have scar tissue, that's for sure. But it's going to minimize how much scar tissue. If you had a scar on your arm, you would want that to be nice and small. You wouldn't want it to be big and gnarly. So we don't want that forming in your spine.
And to decrease the inflammation as much as possible so you get a healthy form of healing.
So that's scar tissue. So our treatments are actually to minimize the stress on a joint and to get the brain to give it more information, which is what we specialize in, so that it heals. For about 12 weeks, it's going to do that. Then we're going to do something where we cause it to heal even better, because now you have all the scar tissue, and your body has built up little pain receptors around it to protect it, and they start branching off, and you start getting all these pain receptors.
So you actually have more pain receptors to the scar tissue than you did to the normal healthy tissue. That's why a scar is so painful.
And that surprises people, because scar tissue has three things that are wrong. It is weaker, stiffer, and more sore. It's more sore because there's more pain receptors. It's weaker because it's really not built right, and it gives out because as it gets stressed, it goes away and it fires all these receptors. So we have to do something with it, and we do that by arranging the tissue so it has better energy. I'm going to use this one, right?
Gotcha.
Okay. So we work this tissue, so it starts healing and starts looking. Now the scar tissue is always there, so there's a little minimum, but the better we can do a job, the better that you make sure you get on top of this right away, the better it's going to heal in there. And now you have more tissue that's aligned. It has better energy movement. It's called vectors of energy.
So, and how do we as chiropractors have this happen in a healthy pattern?
Well, the therapies we do, the muscle work we do, including your brain that goes into these areas. And then at the end, if this were a muscle, let's say, you would want to make that muscle stronger, more flexible, and have better endurance. And so there's a strategy here. Because once you're injured, it's going to happen. And unless we do something about it, it will cause you permanent injury and permanent results.
So what is this explaining? This is this fibrosis of repair that you just spoke about.
Yeah, so imagine this is this little area, and it sends a signal into your spinal cord, and then it crosses into your spinal cord and goes up to your spinal column, goes into a thing called the cerebellum, and then crosses over to your other side of your brain that receives the pain. So one thing that people learn when they come into our clinic is that pain is always on the other side of the brain that's where it's weakest. It's having its problem, pain is usually on the other side. And we use that with a lot of different techniques we have called hemisphericity. And the other thing is what we can do is this area is going to build up those extra pain receptors. Well, the good thing is these joints, where these joints are, there are facets and discs where chiropractors adjust these joints. We make those move well within the range of motion, but we stimulate a whole different set of receptors that fire up the spinal cord, go in the cerebellum, and go in here and cause serotonin to be released to come down in this area, and it kills off the extra pain receptors.
So inhibition of pain by moving the facets and joints of the spine with feedback to the brain and the feedback loop decreasing the pain.
So what do we have? We can get the pain to go away, but what we can't get to go away is the scar tissue. So you have to make sure this fibrosis is repaired, is handled. So people say, well, why do I need to get treated? You need to get treated because you want to minimize any permanent injury and have scar tissue in your body, which will then create other problems which we could expect to have.
Right. And we are also specialists in the brain, and we practice functional neurology in our clinic. And this has to do with the action in the brain and how it's relating to all these structures in the spine.
Yeah, we have a special techniques that we can accelerate your recovery. And what we're trying to do is give you a reason why you get hurt, because those tissues are going to get torn, there's going to be damage, your body's going to be going one way, and there's all different kinds of vectors or directions you can hit from. But if you're involved in an accident, even a small one, it's best you come in and get examined for two reasons. Number one, we'll find out if you have a problem. And number two, if you don't have an injury, we'll find out that you don't have an injury, and it'll be documented in case you get in an accident later, and everybody wants to blame it on the previous accident because it happens all the time.
And in our next section, we're going to talk to you about how concussions, which are caused mostly by motor vehicle trauma, affect your brain, affect your healing, and what you can do for concussion treatment.
And we specialize in concussion here. We treat athletes and people that it's kind of more obvious, but the thing we found is that when we started looking at people with motor vehicle accidents, concussions are involved. So thank you for listening.
And we'll be right back with concussion.
Hey, it's time for the Big Brain Radio Show on TV. I'm Dr. David Susi, and you can call me Dr. D.
And I'm Dr. Zena Zanders, and you can call me Dr. Z.
And we are the Big Brain Radio Show on TV. Here we are on TV.
Welcome
again.
back. We have the big subject of
Concussions.
Concussions, and why it's so important, especially in motor vehicle trauma.
Our clinic specializes in concussions, and we find they happen, but the number one way that people get concussions is in motor vehicle accidents, and it's often misdiagnosed or not paid attention to. So we want you to understand the seriousness of these injuries and why they happen.
Wonderful. So most people know and have heard of a whiplash injury, and they think of that mostly in the neck. But what is happening to the brain and the skull while the neck and body is being whiplashed?
Well, the brain's inside an enclosed skull, and it's attached to the neck. But the thing is, right up in here is where your brain stem, and the neck pulls on your brain, and your brain actually gets torqued because the brain is not evenly weighted, so it'll twist at the same time it's going back and forth, and the neck gets twisted, your brainstem gets twisted like this from that impact as low as 3 to 5 miles an hour. It gets twisted like you're wringing out a towel, like that, okay? And just to show you how intimate, you'll see that your spinal cord goes all the way right up in here, so any damage to this area is going to change how you perceive your body. And so one of the reasons people feel pain, even though they haven't been as injured as locally, is because the brain can't inhibit all the pain that's caused by these damages when you've had a concussion.
So the spinal cord connects to the brain, the cortex, by the brainstem. And in the brainstem is where all the neurology is for things like respiration, blood pressure. People often say they have trouble sleeping. They're very anxious and emotional after a car accident, and that's because this central area of the brainstem has been damaged.
And then another one is at the very top of the brainstem is the area where you have your balance, your sense of balance through your ear system, your eyes and your movement, your ability to focus and pay attention to life. So that often gets altered, and it's very subtle because your body will tend to make up for it at first, but then you've got an injured body that is compensating to this loss of balance, inability to focus, and all of a sudden things start happening that don't make sense to people. But because no one really equates the injury with this happens all the time, and I guess that's why we're saying this, because we want you to know that you are going to be altered in your behavior, and your cognitive appearances will not be as good. You may find that you're getting angry at your friends for no reason, or have your feelings hurt very well, or things that you normally would remember, you're not remembering. It isn't like a clear line. It's very subtle. The more stress you're under in a daily life, your brain and your spine do not support your lifestyle in your environment.
And one of the most traumatic pieces of a concussion is how it affects your vision and your eyes. There's become a disconnection. And oftentimes, if you watch someone's eyes who've been in a car accident, their eyes will be jumping around. They're supposed to be still. You're supposed to be able to move your head and your eyes remain still, or be able to focus. And oftentimes there's a convergence of the eyes, where the eyes are coming down and in and spasming. And people will notice that it's hard to focus on their computer screens, they can't seem to read anymore, and they're getting a lot of headaches. So headaches are one of the #1 symptoms that you have sustained a concussion in a motor vehicle accident as well.
Yeah, we as humans have this ability to have a fovea in our eyes that we can fixate on things. We have to be holding our attention on that. And if we can't fixate on that with our eyes, then we will not get the information. And so our eyes will dart around, and when we're not on that object, we actually are technically blind. So there's information that we won't get. We'll feel a little foggy. It'll seem like we can't remember when we actually didn't pick up the information accurately to start with. And this, if you're in any kind of a place where you have to use your eyes constantly, this is going to get very fatiguing. And the other thing that happens when your eyes move, your neck has to make up for its ability, and so your neck gets compromised. And so you have a difference in
Instead of your eyes stabilizing and tracking, your neck clamps down to try to do the work of the eyes. And this increases the neck pain that you've probably already sustained having an accident.
It's called a sensory mismatch. And you can tell if you have it, just move your neck and see if it's stiff, and then close your eyes and see if your neck moves better. And if it moves better with your eyes closed, you have a sensory mismatch. You probably have one of these injuries or have had them at some times. And they're often, so people are trying to get rid of this pain, but it's really due to the fact that your vision has one idea, because our brain's main dictum is not to let us fall and to be able to move. So it will make all these different body movements in order to make up for these injuries to the central nervous system.
And you may be saying, what does this have to do with chiropractic care? I thought chiropractic was about adjusting the spine. Well, it is about adjusting the spine, but the #1 input to the brain is the spine. We have the most mechanoreceptors in our spine that give the most input to the brain. And you can be injured from side to side, and those are called hemisphericities. So sometimes after an accident, someone may be experiencing more pain on the left side of their body. It could be that they sustained more of a concussion on the right side because this neurology crosses over. And we're specialists in our office with something called functional neurology. It's a higher level of chiropractic training.
And the other thing is when the spine is injured, our brains are run by the fact that the muscles in our spine, 90% of them, are stimulated by gravity and keep us going as human beings. It has to do with our development. Since we're a little child, these muscles cause our development. So if they are not being stimulated on a daily basis, then your brain has areas that are going to start to go to sleep because they haven't been stimulated. And it'll be very subtle, but then in the long run, you'll be having some things that cause you great distress.
So if you or someone you know has been involved in a car accident, either as a passenger or a driver, or if it was your fault or the tree's fault, please find us, and we'd love to do some evaluation to see if you've sustained a whiplash and or concussion.
Yeah, even if you're treating some other place and you're happy with their treatment, that's fine, and we support that. We just want to make sure that this, most clinics, even medical clinics and physical therapy clinics, are not equipped, and they're not even looking for these injuries. And if you don't look for them, they'll get overlooked. And if they do, it can have serious consequences in your ability to make long-term recovery. You'll sort of plateau because this thing will be in the way all the time.
These small brain concussions are not seen on MRI. They're too small to be diagnosed with the current technology. So we're using other forms of diagnoses, including the eyes, to see on a functional level what has happened with the concussion in your brain.
What we do is we reprogram the patterns that have been disconnected in your brain through a series of motions and exercises that involve your senses, your eyes, your sense, your hearing, your movement, your ability to be in certain spaces, and your body will do all the correcting if it's given the right instructions. And that's what we specialize in, is the right instructions.
I think this is a big brain principle.
Yeah, I think it's good. I like that.
I like that.
If you want to have a big brain life, make sure that you have a good head that hasn't been concussed.
Have a big brain day.
In a big brain way.
Have a big brain life.